Before we dive into this dark descent, hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell us in the comments whether you think justice ever truly reaches the walls of Rikers Island, because after this story, you might change your mind. The screen would cut to black. Then sirens. Not the kind you hear from far away, but the kind that rattle your bones, the ones that echo between concrete walls and remind you that inside a place like Rikers Island, danger isn't a possibility. It's a constant. It was 4:17 a.m. when the call came in. A correctional officer on the night shift at the George Machin Detention Center, Rikers' largest and most chaotic building, reported a missing inmate, not unusual on its own. The place was a maze of corridors, blind spots, and failing security cameras. Prisoners slipped out of count all the time. But this inmate wasn't just missing. He had vanished. Elias Vance, 28 years old, arrested 2 months earlier on charges of grand larceny and aggravated assault. Street smart, quiet, and known for keeping his head down. He wasn't affiliated with any gang, didn't owe anyone money, and didn't have the kind of profile that led to sudden disappearances. He was just another face in a sea of gray jumpsuits. Yet when the officers unlocked cell 3B14, they found only a thin trail of dry blood leading from his bunk to the door, a line as straight as a ruler, as though he'd been dragged without resisting. But the cameras? Dead. All of them. Flickering static at the exact time frame between 3:42 a.m. and 4:01 a.m. An impossible coincidence. What made it even stranger was that his cell door showed no signs of force. No malfunction. No override code typed into the panel. No officer login or out of the block. It was like the jail itself had swallowed him. Detective Laura Vega stood outside the unit's entrance as officers scrambled around her, their radios crackling with confused, panicked voices. Vega was known to the NYPD for two things: solving impossible cases, and refusing to back down when she smelled a cover-up. "This isn't an escape," she muttered, stepping past the yellow tape as the shift captain trailed behind her. Escapes require planning, money, connections. Vance had none of those. Captain Harris exhaled sharply. "I'm telling you, Vega." The cameras went out. Sometimes the power. Across 4 separate hallways, 2 pods, an external gate feed. Vega cut in. Come on. Someone helped him, or someone wanted him gone. She crouched beside the thin bloodline on the concrete floor. The trail was about 4 feet long, ending just outside the cell. She ran a gloved finger along the stain. "Not pulling," she said. "He wasn't bleeding to death. He was moved. Dragged." Harris asked. "No," Vega said. "This is too clean. No smearing, no deviation. Whoever moved him controlled the situation. They knew exactly what they were doing." A correctional officer approached. "Detective, you need to see this." Vega followed him down the hallway, through a security checkpoint, and into an observation room filled with outdated monitors. Most of them displayed nothing but the blue glow of error messages. But one screen still worked. A grainy camera positioned outside the laundry room. "Play it," she said. The footage rolled. At 3:39 a.m., the hallway was empty. At 3:40, something flickered in the bottom corner of the frame. A shadow, maybe a distortion. The angle was too poor to identify anything clearly. Then at 3:41 a.m., Elias Vance appeared. He wasn't walking. He wasn't running. He was standing completely still, barefoot, wearing only his undershirt and pants, his hands hanging loosely at his sides, his head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something only he could hear. The footage showed him slowly turning his head toward the camera. His face was blank, unblinking. Then the screen went to static. The timestamp glitched. And when the feed returned at 4:02 a.m., Vance was gone, vanished. Vega stepped back, arms crossed tightly, her jaw set. This isn't coercion. It's not an inmate dispute. Someone inside this facility moved him, and someone inside this facility jammed your cameras. Harris swallowed hard. "Detective, that's not the worst part." He handed her a clear evidence bag. Inside it was a small piece of cardboard torn from a food supply box. On it, in hurried black marker, was a message. He wasn't the first. He won't be the last. By noon, Vega had interviewed 12 inmates, for officers and 2 janitorial staff. None of them claimed to have seen anything. Or maybe they had, but in Rikers, the rule was clear. Talking got you hurt. Her final stop was the administrative wing, where she met Warden Mitchell Darrow, a tall, heavy-set man with shaved head and eyes that rarely blinked. He greeted her with a handshake that felt more like a warning. "Detective, Rikers already has enough problems," he said. Closed his office door. "This isn't the kind of story we need leaking." "So help me solve it," Vega replied. "Help you?" Darrow laughed under his breath. "I'm trying to prevent the city from shutting us down. It's going to shut itself down if you keep losing inmates." A tense silence filled the room. Darrow's jaw tightened. If Vance escaped, the responsibility falls on us. If he was killed, the responsibility falls on us. Either way, this exposed years of negligence, or worse. "Are you suggesting someone here intentionally removed him?" "I'm suggesting," Darrow said slowly, "that this facility is bigger, older, and far more complicated than anyone on the outside understands. Things happen here, things that don't fit neatly into reports. Like disappearing inmates. Like people with power making people like Vance vanish for reasons you and I may never know." Vega leaned forward. "Warden, if there's something you're not telling me." A sharp knock cut her off. A correctional officer entered, whispering to the warden. Darrow's eyes widened, and he dismissed Vega with a raised hand. "Detective, our conversation is over." "That's fine," she replied coolly, "because I'm not done investigating." She stepped into the hallway, just in time to see 2 officers rushing toward the infirmary. Something was wrong. Very wrong. She followed. When she reached the infirmary, she saw a stretcher being rolled out. A sheet covered the body from head to toe, but Vega recognized a uniform. It was the officer who'd reported Vance missing, Officer DeMarco, a man who had insisted earlier he didn't know a single thing. Now he was dead. A nurse hovered nearby, trembling. "We found him collapsed in the supply closet. No signs of struggle. No wounds. Nothing." Vega frowned. "Heart attack." The nurse shook her head. "Maybe, but you need to see his hands." The nurse lifted the sheet just enough for Vega to see. Under the officer's fingernails were long, jagged scrapes of fresh concrete, like he dug at the walls with everything he had. What the hell happened to him? Vega whispered. Before anyone could answer, another officer burst down the hallway. "Detective Vega, we found something in DeMarco's locker." She followed them to a small room behind the security post. An officer pulled the metal door open. Inside the locker was nothing but a single notebook, a journal. The pages were filled with frantic, uneven handwriting. Vega picked it up, flipping to the most recent entry, dated just 12 hours before DeMarco died. "Cell 3B. 14 isn't right. Vance said he heard someone calling him at night. Said someone was watching him through the vent. Said they promised to get him out. I told him it was in his head. But then I heard it too." Vega's pulse quickened. She turned the page. "I don't care what the warden says. I don't care what they told us during training. Something is happening inside this place. Someone is choosing inmates. I think I'm next." The final line was scribbled so violently the ink had torn into the paper. "If anything happens to me, check the old chapel." Vega froze. The old chapel. A building condemned 20 years earlier after a fire gutted most of it. No one was supposed to go near it. No power. No cameras. No guards. But it was still there. A place forgotten by the administration, or deliberately ignored. Before Vega could process the implication, the lights above her flickered. Once. Twice. Then the intercom crackled. A voice, distorted and motionless, echoed through every hallway of the unit. "Detective Vega, stop looking." The officers around her stiffened. Vega's heart pounded. She hadn't told anyone outside the room her name. She hadn't logged into the system. She hadn't announced her arrival. Someone was watching her. Someone who knew what she was doing. Someone who wanted her gone. She looked down at the journal again. The last page fluttered, revealing a folded map tucked into the back pocket. A map of Rikers Island, with one location circled in red ink. The old chapel. Vega exhaled slowly, determination hardening her voice. "Get me a full tactical team," she said. "We're going there tonight." But before she could close the notebook, another piece of paper slipped out, a narrow strip torn from the same cardboard used in the earlier message. It read, "If you open that door, you'll never leave." Vega's stomach twisted, because whoever left that warning had signed it, a name written in shaky, desperate letters. Elias Vance. She stared at the signature, then at the map. Everything about this case had just changed. And as the wind rattled the barred windows of the infirmary hallway, Detective Laura Vega realized the missing inmate wasn't the only one in danger. Someone inside Rikers had declared war, and she was now part of the target list. But when she reached the old chapel later that night, the first thing she found wasn't Elias Vance. It wasn't a body. It wasn't even a person. It was a door locked from the outside, a door with fresh scratch marks clawed into the wood. And when Vega's team pried it open, what they found inside changed everything. Hale's warning hung in the stale air. "Laura, don't turn around." But Vega had already shifted her stance, weapon lowered but ready. Breath held as the tunnel door eased open. The hinges screeched like metal dragged across bone. Darkness spilled out first, a thick, suffocating void, and then a silhouette emerged, not limping, not crawling, not restrained, walking. A figure stepped into the light, gaunt but standing tall, eyes hollowed from exhaustion and weeks of fear. Elias Vance. Alive. Very alive. But something in his expression made Vega's stomach twist. This wasn't the terrified voice she heard on the recorder. This wasn't a man desperate for rescue. This was someone who had made a choice he regretted or one he could no longer escape. Vance raised a shaking hand toward Vega, palm open, fingers trembling. "Detective," his voice cracked dust dry. "You shouldn't have come. They told me you'd try. I begged them to leave you out of it." Behind her, Hale stepped closer. His voice was strangely gentle, almost mournful. "Laura, please listen to him." Vega kept her weapon steady. "Elias, who did this to you?" Vance swallowed, Adam's apple trembling. "Everyone. And no one. It's not one person. It's not the warden. Not the officers. Not the gangs. It's bigger." "Bigger how?" Vance looked over his shoulder toward the tunnel. "They use us, move us, study us, swap us, like inventory. If you don't cooperate, you disappear. If you do, you survive, but not as yourself." He tapped his temple. "You don't understand what they want." Vega stepped forward. "But you escaped." His face twisted into something like grief. "No," he whispered. "They let me out because they wanted you to find me." Hale inhaled sharply. "Elias, don't." But Vance cut him off. "You brought her here. She needs to know." Vega's pulse thundered in her ears. "Ryan, what is he talking about?" Hale looked like a man torn in half. His face, normally calm, now carried years of hidden weight. "I try to protect you," he whispered. "I try to push this case back, make you drop it, but you didn't listen." He gestured toward Vance. He wasn't supposed to survive the transfer, but he begged him to let him warn you. Vance nodded, tears gathering in the corners of his eyes. "They said if I came out, if I delivered the message, I'd get a chance to start over." Vega frowned. "What message?" Vance stepped closer, his voice breaking. "Leave Rikers. Tonight. Forget the files. Forget the names. Forget me." Silence. Cold, choking silence. Vega felt her jaw tighten. "I can't walk away. Not after what I saw in that chapel. Not after what they've done." Vance shook his head violently. "If you stay, they'll mark you. And once they mark you, you never get off their list." Vega stepped forward. "Who are they?" Vance's next words were barely a whisper, more breath than sound. "Everyone who knows this tunnel exists." The hairs on Vega's arms rose. Hale lowered his gaze. "That's why I wanted you gone," he said quietly. "I can't stop them. And if you keep digging, I can't save you." Vega stared at both men, realization settling in her bones like ice. Rikers Island didn't hide a conspiracy. Rikers was a conspiracy. Transfers that weren't transfers. Deaths that weren't deaths. Files cataloging human lives like supplies. Officers caught in the system, forced to choose between complicity and silence. Inmates used as leverage, as currency, as experiments in compliance and control. This was bigger than homicide, bigger than corruption, bigger than anything she could arrest her way out of. This was a machine, and she had stepped directly into its gears. Vance's voice broke through her thoughts. "They're coming." "How do you know?" she whispered. "Because they always come when a transfer is interrupted." Hale stepped closer to Vega, eyes filled with an emotion she'd never seen in him before. Fear. "Laura, go home. File the thinnest report you can. Say it was a false alarm. Say nothing else. If you fight this, you die. If you expose it, you die. If you breathe wrong about it. They'll make me disappear," she finished. He nodded once. Vance backed toward the tunnel, desperation twisting his features. "Detective, please. If you leave now, you can still live your life. If you don't..." He looked back toward the darkness behind him. Footsteps echoed in the tunnel. Multiple sets. Rhythmic. Coordinated. Vance's breathing quickened. "They're here." Hale grabbed Vega's arm. "Laura, move." But Vega wasn't ready. She stared at the tunnel door, at the silhouette of men approaching, and then at Elias Vance, the inmate who had begged for escape, then begged to be captured again if it meant keeping her alive. "No," she whispered. "I'm not leaving him." Vance's eyes widened. "You can't save me. I have to try." The footsteps grew louder. Hale raised his hands toward Vega, pleading, "If you stay, you'll die for nothing." Vega lifted her chin. "Then let them hear this," she said, voice steady. "If they want me quiet, they should have killed me before I saw that chapel." Hale closed his eyes, regret heavy on his face. "God, Laura, you were always going to be the one they couldn't control." The tunnel lights flickered. Shadows stretched across the walls. And then the figures stepped into view. Not masked, not armed, not frenzied. Calm, uniformed, professional, correctional officers, administrators, medical staff, people who walked the halls every day unnoticed. People Vega had spoken to hours earlier. They stopped at the threshold, expressionless, waiting. One of them, a Lieutenant Vega recognized, spoke. "Detective Vega, the warden wants you escorted off the island. Now." Vega squared her shoulders. "And if I refuse?" The lieutenant's voice didn't change. "Then your transfer will begin immediately." Hale stepped between them. "She's leaving." She didn't move. "What about him?" Vega motioned to Vance. No answer. The lieutenant turned to Elias. "Step forward." Vance did, not by choice, by resignation. He looked at Vega with hollow eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I shouldn't have asked them to spare you. You would have walked away. And now..." He looked at the officers waiting for him. "Now I go back." The officers took Vance by the arms, guiding him into the tunnel. He didn't resist. Because resisting here didn't matter. Because the world would never know he existed. Vega's throat tightened. "Elias." He looked back one last time. "Detective, don't let them take you too." Then he was swallowed by the dark. The door slammed shut. Bolts locked. Latches sealed. Silence returned. And Vega understood the truth. No report she filed would matter. No raid would topple this. No badge could protect her from what was beneath Rikers Island. Hale placed a hand on her shoulder. "Laura," to walk away. She didn't look at him. "Does the city know?" she asked quietly. "No," he said, "and it never will." She inhaled, the cold air burning her lungs. "Then I'll expose it." Hale sighed, a broken sound. "I hope you wouldn't say that." She turned to him and saw the devastation in his eyes. "Ryan, are you going to stop me?" He didn't answer, because he didn't need to. Two officers tightened formation behind her. Hale lowered his voice. "No one gets out of Rikers with the truth, and those who try..." His voice cracked. "Don't stay alive long enough to tell it." Vega stepped back, hands raised. not surrender, but to steady herself. "I'm leaving the island," she said softly, "but I'm not done." Hale closed his eyes. "I know." She exhaled slowly, then whispered, "And neither are they." Hale opened his eyes, and in them she saw a flash of something like mourning. "Laura, I'm sorry." The officers escorted her toward the exit gate. Not arrested, not cuffed, but removed like a threat that couldn't be contained. Behind her, the tunnel door remained sealed. And somewhere deep beneath Rikers Island, Elias Vance's voice, terrified, tired, and resigned, echoed in the cold stone. Transfer unsuccessful. As Vega boarded the ferry back to the mainland, she stared at the island shrinking behind her. She wasn't afraid. She was furious, because she understood now. Rikers Island didn't need ghosts. It made its own, and before the wind swallowed her words, she whispered to herself, "If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for what comes next."